just Sean and Justin made it. Theme was previously stated. About to start, so glad I waited. Somehow related.
Hello, friends. You're listening to Somehow Related. I'm currently snug as a bug in a rug right now.
And I'm not.
Yeah. Each week, Justin and I sit down to have a little chat about something that is somehow related to whatever we talked about last week.
Yeah, so Sean, last time we talked about our top 5 movies, right?
Yeah.
So, in the true spirit of somehow related, today I picked the topic of one of my top mysteries involving 5 people.
Okay. Yeah, really laying on the somehow
Yeah.
part.
So this particular event is often referred to as the American Dyatlov Pass, which I really want to make sure you hear because that is somehow related to this topic, and that's a really cool topic. So, for those, some people may know what I'm talking about, but it's the Yuba County 5, often referred to as Yuba County, Yuba City 5, whatever, somewhere in California. Like I said, many call it the American Dyatlov Pass because it's
Yuba City is by Sacramento.
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, they call it the American Dyatlov Pass because, like that event, this one it's very kind of eerie. It's a mystery. It's a disappearance. There's many theories about what happened. It's just kind of all around. Oftentimes it's kind of pointed to as a creepy story. Mm-hmm. And doing research for this, frankly, I feel like Dyatlov Pass is even more eerie than this. That one's truly inexplicable. I feel like with this one, you can kind of settle on, kind of a theory that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I think you can make sense of it. But if anything, this one is just, in researching it, it's just more tragic and sad than anything really. But let's just get into it, okay?
I'll say what, I love a good mystery.
Yeah.
I love a good creepy mystery. I'm a big creepy mystery guy.
Yeah, I like to... lately, I go through phases, and lately I've found myself in another one where I kind of really go down those kind of rabbit holes of disappearances and, strange happenings, and, weird, internet sites, and, what is this? Is this, a number station? All those kind of things. A lot of times, it is kind of nothing, or it's clearly, a fabricated, augmented reality game, and people are just trying to play it up for content. But sometimes you find a true, for lack of a better word, gem, where it does line up as a true blue mystery.
Sometimes, truly, ain't nothing make no sense.
Yeah, like this one. So let's go ahead and just dive right in. It's called the Yuba County 5 because it involves 5 young men from, Yuba City, California, cool. Which apparently is by Sacramento.
Yeah. And
this happened in February of 1978, so quite a bit ago. But our guys, their names were Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias. Okay. They range from their mid-20s to early 30s.
2 Jacks.
Yes.
Okay.
But from here on out, I'll just refer to them by their last names.
Oh, okay.
Just because, I don't know about you, but when I hear stories like this and... it's a number of people, and they're referred to by their first and or last names kind of throughout. I just get confused.
Okay, so just last.
So names. I'll just use their last names from here on out. Yeah, but they range from their mid-20s to early 30s. I believe Weir was the oldest at 32, and I think maybe Sterling or Hewitt.
How old you are?
Yeah, Sterling or Hewitt were 24. One of them was 24.
That's younger than me.
Yep. So what's noteworthy about these 5 men is that 4 out of them live with some form of intellectual or learning disability. And, it should also be noted that they could function reasonably well.
Yeah. Are we talking dyslexia or something would fall into that? What are we saying?
It's hard to say exactly because, this being the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
In coverage at the time, um, the description of their mental state was, less than politically correct.
The kid's got horse brains.
Yeah. Like Weir was, I think his family said he was slow of mind or something like that, where he was able to function, but he had a kind of a hard time retaining jobs and such. He did simple jobs, but sometimes had problems, and say like his parents would encourage him to maybe leave one because he was kind of struggling some. There was one time I believe he was. It was said he bought like 100 pencils, or $100 worth of pencils for no reason, which especially in the 70s is a
That's
lot.
a ton of pencils. I didn't think about that.
Is a lot of money for a lot of pencils for no reason.
So many pencils.
Or like he didn't really grasp why you had to stop at a stoplight.
Okay.
One of them, I believe it was Sterling, who he really hated using the phone, and that he would use his brother to actually dial numbers for him and like talk on the phone for him, even to his own friends.
Huh.
So
some kind of sensory aversion thing there.
Some kind of thing. So they're all different, but all able to reasonably function. They were. That being said, all 5 of them were, they lived at home, and that was the plan, was to live at home. So they were very, very home centric, and that does come into play here in a little bit. And I said 4 out of the 5 had a disability. The 5th, Gary Mathias, was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So he didn't have a cognitive impairment or like a learning disability, but he did have that kind of going for him.
I thought you were gonna be like, he was a genius.
He
invented the waterbed.
Yep, and he lived off that for years. Now I'm not
on that for years.
This is not to point
on a waterbed.
Now this is not to point to these impairments and the mental illness as like a fault that 100% led to, like, it made their disappearances inevitable, or this tragedy inevitable. Like, oh, of course, they can't be trusted to, do simple tasks. How could they, of course this happened? No. But it is commonly pointed out, and I think it is worth mentioning, because in odd situations and stressful situations, everything is a factor.
Yeah, it's just added context.
Exactly. Matthias, the one I said who had schizophrenia, he was actually in the army for a bit, and he was discharged because he evidently he spiraled a bit, and it was actually drug use that got him discharged from it. Okay. But leading up to it, he had kind of outbursts and run-ins with the law and altercations with people. But it should also be noted that leading up to this event, their disappearances, he got onto his medications, and his own father, who was, my impression was kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy, or like a really straight talker kind of guy.
Yeah.
He said that, Matthias was on the straight and narrow, and that he was, pretty like a success story.
Dude,
so
he's wild. Like, I've known people with schizophrenia or like similar conditions, and like, it's insane what medication can do for these people. Like, it is a night and day difference. It is. So I mean, if he was, if he's sticking to it, I do believe his father. Some people might hear that and be like, oh yeah, I'm sure he was like for someone with schizophrenia, but no, I mean, like, seriously, like, treatment makes a huge difference.
Right. And yeah, it sounds like he was doing great leading up to this. Yeah. So moving on, the 5 were such close friends that they were simply referred to by their families as the boys.
The boys.
So as we go forward, I'll probably be referring to them as the boys, just collectively. So the boys had a passion for sports, and they played basketball together. Now, they met each other at it was a vocational rehab center for people with impairments and certain illnesses and stuff like that. So that's where they all met.
Yeah.
Because they were of similar
situation.
Yeah. Now, the rehab center had a basketball team called the Gateway Gators, which they were all a part of. And they were very much into it. They loved playing sports, watching sports. That's what bonded them.
They were sports boys.
Right. Now, that month, the Special Olympics was set to sponsor a week-long basketball tournament, in which the Gators were to play in. And I believe it was the winners, or if you got far enough, the team that got far enough or won would actually get a free trip, a week-long trip to Los Angeles.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, there was
That's
stuff on the
sweet.
line, yeah. And needless to say, the boys were very excited, and to the point where, like, Matthias, he really, some would say, pestered his mom to make sure she woke him up on time to get to the game.
That's cool.
Right?
And I'd be excited if I got a free trip to Los Angeles, and I don't even like Los Angeles.
Yeah, right. It's just a free trip,
Yeah.
week long. And, like, I believe from what some sources say that all of them had their uniforms actually laid out the day before.
Nice.
They're like to play, so they're really looking forward to
Yeah,
it.
super excited.
So the day before their first game, they decided to go watch UC Davis play what's now called Chico State, and their team was UC Davis. So they were pretty excited. They drove 50 miles north to Chico to see it. So it's about an hour drive. Now, of the 5, 2 of them had a driver's license. There was Madruga and Matthias. So they took Madruga's car, and he had a Mercury Montego.
Cool.
Or Montego, not sure.
Don't know what that looks like.
Anyway, they piled into Madruga's car. It was kind of the quintessential kind of
Car.
70s sedan.
Okay.
I imagine if you think of probably the car from Dukes of Hazzard, you're not too far off.
Okay.
So they all piled in there and drove about an hour north to the game. Now, that night, the UC Davis wins, so they're feeling good. Their team won, and now they're like, okay, we're going to go off and going to play our own game tomorrow. It's going to be great. We're living high. Young men, excited. We're doing great. So what do they do when they're feeling great? Well, they obviously need a snack. So on the way home, after the game, they stop off at a market called Bear's Market.
Yeah.
Just a little bit away from the venue. They buy candy bars, sodas, a couple cartons of milk.
Nice.
And
Dude, honestly, I'm going to say so far, this sounds awesome.
yeah, this
You're
is
just
the whole
hanging out
story.
with your friends. You're in a Mercury Montego or whatever.
Yeah.
Go see a basketball game, getting some snacks.
Yeah, I mean, we've all kind of been there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially any young guy has been in a similar
With his
kind of...
boys.
Yeah, exactly. With the boys. Now, the clerk that night remembered them specifically because they came in just as she was closing up shop. Now, one source that I saw said the clerk was a she, but I'm not exactly sure or not. I don't know if they were wrong or not, but I'm going to go by that.
Okay.
So,
Is
yeah.
there a reason to doubt it?
Well, because none of the other
Women
none of the others specified,
Oh,
and so I like to kind of triangulate facts and stuff.
I see.
And one of the sources was just kind of like a blog, so I'm not sure if that. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
In case somebody's like, no, it was
That was
a
my
guy.
That was my great uncle.
Yeah, yeah. So but she was closing up shop, and they came in right before
Yeah,
they closed.
checks out.
And so she
I
had to
remember
stay a
that
little bit
too.
late. She had to stay a little bit late because of them.
Yeah.
And especially being a group of young guys,
True, yeah.
they're probably not just coming in, grabbing stuff and paying for it.
Yeah.
They're probably
They're
dilly-dallying.
stoked. Their team just won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're they're just messing around. So they take off from the store, and they never made it home.
Dang.
Now, the boys were reported missing fairly quickly since they all lived at home, like I mentioned. So, hours go by, and, if one set of parents notices, their son's not home, and they kind of call the other ones because they're all pretty friendly with each other.
Yeah.
And it's clear none of the boys made it home. And I believe it was the next night where they actually reported them missing. And this is kind of contrary to what other accounts of missing people you hear, especially shows you see on TV where the police this time actually got on it pretty quick.
Okay, cool.
It wasn't a case of oh, you gotta wait longer, maybe they just ran away. Police love saying that they just ran away.
Yeah.
No.
That's actually is surprising because it's 5 adults.
Yeah, it's 5
So
adults.
I'm surprised they got on it that quick.
It might have been actually maybe their mental impairments,
Right.
that they were like, okay, well,
We'll
maybe
check this out.
they just took a wrong turn.
Yeah.
So authorities searched for 3 days along the road between Yuba and Chico, as makes sense, right? Maybe they got in a car wreck or something, but they had no results. Their big break came when a park ranger reported that he'd seen a car parked on the side of the road in Plumas National Forest, and it ended up being Madruga's Montego. Now, this road where the car was actually found, it was a little disconcerting because the car was found 70 miles from Chico in the wrong direction from their hometown of Yuba. So they're in Chico. They have to drive 50 miles south to get to Yuba. Well, it's a pretty straight shot if you look at a map. Where the car was found was actually, like I said, 70 miles away. It is almost due east.
It's like the opposite direction.
Basically,
It's
yeah.
just the wrong direction.
Just the wrong direction, yeah. On a map, it's a little stranger even because they didn't just drive due east a long time. They would have driven south for a bit and then kind of horseshoed and then has gone a long ways up. And the drive home would have been, like I said, about an hour.
Yeah.
And one source that I saw kind of likened this to more of like a 2.5 hour drive.
Dang.
So that is very, very odd. Additionally, the Montego was found on a very rough dirt road up in the mountains. So the boys, they dressed pretty light.
Yeah.
Because they're going to stay in the valley, of course. The car was found up around the snow line of the mountains. And on a dirt road, not typically, like, it's very, very rural.
Yeah.
It's not a place anyone really would want to go to late at night.
Yeah.
Because the game was at night.
It doesn't seem like it's accidental.
No, because if it's an accident, if you're not meaning to go up there, it's going to be clear you took a wrong turn,
like,
so why don't you turn around?
Once the road is dirt, and you're like, we should turn around.
Yeah, exactly. What's strange about that is none of the boys had any real history of liking the outdoors. A couple of them had been around this area, and I use that term very loosely.
Yeah.
They had been around the area before, whether it's hunting or camping or something, but hated it.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a group that would just spontaneously say, "Oh, let's go up the mountains and hang out." Like, we know people who would do that, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's go up the canyon and do a fire.
Yeah.
But these kids are basically like, it's like five of me,
Which I
where
don't
they
like.
don't want to be outside. They don't want to be out late at night, especially because a couple of them specifically hated being out late. And so why wouldn't they just go home straight from the game?
I gotta tell you, I like the outdoors. I don't like doing fires in the canyon.
Yeah.
Mostly because
It's a lot of-
usually like when it's happened to me, like I'll be with a group of friends and we're all just sitting around talking, and then someone goes, "Let's do a fire in the canyon," and I don't like that because it's like we're just gonna go up there and sit around and talk, but now I have to take a shower when I get home and wash all the clothes.
And now it's just going to take a lot longer. Like time we could spend just enjoying each other's company and talking, we're going to now spend driving
and getting wood
up there and
fire some
down,
stuff.
and it's just a big pain.
I'm not a fan. I like a bonfire when it's planned, but I don't like a spontaneous go up to whatever, Anyway, go ahead. Keep going.
So these weren't those kind of guys. Now, moving on to the condition of the car. So the car was found up in the mountains in the wrong direction. It was in good condition, if a little messy. It had empty wrappers inside, cans, and milk cartons. So this was their car. Everything they bought at Bear Market was there. The only thing, apparently, that I heard that was not eaten was the Marathon bar, which I guess apparently its whole idea was you can't get through it.
It's the Marathon bar?
The Marathon bar, and that was the one thing that wasn't eaten. I don't know if it's just really dense or something.
What is a Marathon bar? Do you know the makeup of a Marathon bar?
No, for some reason I imagine a huge Cliff Bar.
Oh, I was thinking just a mega Snickers.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they make them still. I think it is kind of a Gen X thing.
I wonder if it's wonder if they're well, let's save this Marathon bar for when we get back, because we're gonna be really hungry when we get back to the car.
Yeah, let's all, guys, we're gonna share this Marathon bar. So, so their families had a similar reaction to us. They were just very, very, very confused. They couldn't imagine why any of them would have driven up there. And it's unlikely they had planned it, having only brought light clothing.
Yeah.
Because, they were going to stay in the valley. It was definitely not suited for travels above the snow line in the winter again. Or in the winter. Okay, because again, it was February.
Yeah.
So plenty, it was toward the tail end of winter. It's had plenty of time for snow to accumulate. It's really cold up there. Like I said, Sterling had been up in the area before and hated it. And Madruga, who was driving, he, didn't like it either. So why would he drive up there? Yeah. Even more confounding, turns out, was why the boys not just had been there, but had abandoned the car. Police noted that it looked like it had been kind of maybe stuck in the snow a little bit, and that the tires had spun some.
Okay.
But it was easily capable, or it would have been easily dislodged by 5 full-grown men.
Yeah, that's
5
true.
guys could get anything like unstuck from snow. 5.
Believe me.
Ranging from 24 to 32.
I mean, that makes sense.
So that was strange. Like I said, the car wasn't stuck. They could have easily gotten it out. Now they wondered, hey, maybe the car broke down or something. Maybe there was some kind of malfunction that happened. So police hotwired the car since the keys were not there. But it started immediately, and they had a quarter tank of gas left. So the car was perfectly fine. They had enough gas to get back for sure. There was no reason why anyone would abandon it.
Keys were in the car too. Yeah, they just abandoned it.
The keys were in the car, so that means probably that Madruga would have taken it with him. Yeah. Also, the undercarriage showed no signs of damage, which this being apparently a very treacherous road with a lot of kind of the dirt equivalent of potholes and rocks and stuff is very strange. This led the police to believe that either the driver knew the road well or was driving extremely slow. Now, I'm inclined to believe that it was just Madruga driving really slow.
Right.
Because he wouldn't have been familiar with this road, having, not liked being outdoors much. Yeah. And because this car, Madruga's car, was his baby. He loved it. He always maintained, it was his trophy.
Also, and the fact adds to but just the driving slow. It kind of adds to like the sense of determination too. Like we are going to get through. I will bring my baby through this dirt, but we're gonna go super slow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. There's a bit of thought behind it, not just kind of a cavalier, Yeah. And the fact that the window was rolled down and the driver's door was unlocked was very strange to Madruga's parents too, because of it being his baby. It was unlike him for him to leave it so unsecured and walk away. Yeah. Like I said, there weren't any mud scraps on it. So the car had been driven miles from where any of them would reasonably be, and then abandoned for apparently no reason. Like I said, the keys weren't in the ignition, the door was unlocked. One could infer that the men planned on coming back soon, maybe after finding help for some reason. Yeah. Or doing whatever. Because Madruga took the keys, but he left the door unlocked. Apparently, he felt okay leaving it like that. In the middle of the forest, though. In the middle of the forest.
How could you feel so confident that you'll be right, back in 2 seconds?
The only thing I can imagine is maybe they went off to pee or something, but all of them exactly, all at the same time, and nowhere to be found. Yeah. So but still, it was reasonable to assume maybe the boys hadn't gone too far, especially since they were most likely on foot, right? Maybe they would have been a little worse for wear since it was a few days, but, it shouldn't be hard to find. The kicker is that there was a severe snowstorm later that day, which stalled all efforts to find them. It was such a bad storm that 2 searchers themselves were almost lost. And so authorities were forced to call off the search. And they were forced to call off the search apparently just indefinitely, which I think was kind of odd. I think I can imagine calling off the search for the duration of the storm.
Right.
But to leave 5 people out there indefinitely.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't really get that.
Right. Especially because there's no evidence that they're no longer alive at this point, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they just went missing.
Yeah, like it's very likely they're still out there.
Yeah.
So enter Joseph Shones. So police appealed to the public for information regarding the 5 men when they disappeared. And one person who came forward was Joseph Shones. Now, he told police that he had been traveling up that same road, actually, to check conditions ahead of like a planned camping trip for his family. They were, I guess, based at a like a lodge about 8 miles down the road, downhill. And he says, I'm going to get a head start. I'm going to check the snow conditions. I'll be right back. So he drives up there in his, I guess, his VW Beetle or Bug or something. And eventually his car does get stuck. And trying to get it free, he suffers a mild heart attack. Which is the worst thing.
It's like the 70s in a sentence, I feel like.
Yeah. He was in his 50s, so he's still fairly, kind of young, but it being the 70s, he probably survived on, red meat and
cigarettes.
Yeah.
Cigarette and ham sandwiches.
Yeah. Extra bread, extra ham. So, in trying to get his car unstuck, he has a mild heart attack. So, he can't get his car unstuck, and he's just stuck in the middle of basically the woods. So he just rides it out in his car, and he's left there basically for the rest of the night.
This guy survived.
Well,
I mean, I'm not trying to compare, but I mean, like, that's what I'm saying is, like, it makes the disappearance so much stranger.
Yeah.
Because, like, this guy is, like, also went up there, also got his car stuck.
He
tried to unstick it by himself, had a heart attack.
Yeah.
And stuck up all night.
And he didn't have the worst night.
And that's what makes it so much, that's what makes the disappearance to me so much stranger, is that five guys did disappear up there.
Had a worse, 2 guys in probably better physical condition than Shones here. Yeah. So he's riding out in his car. He's just kind of resting and trying to get himself together to either try to get his car unstuck again or just hike back down. Now what happens later, or hours later, he spots headlights down the road behind him. And from what he can tell, it was a car surrounded by 6 people, and one of whom he figured was a woman holding a baby. Now, of course,
6 people.
Yeah. Now, of course, he got out of the car and called out to them for help. And as soon as he did, the headlights, as he said, switched off, and the chattering among the group stopped. So it's as if this group didn't know he was there and then didn't want to be found. Yeah. So he says, well, that's odd and kind of really rude. He's calling out for help. And I doubt he started out like, excuse me, can you come here?
Yeah. Oh, man.
I couldn't find exactly what he said, but I imagine it's something like, help me, please, I'm having a heart attack.
I still can't get over the fact that he had a heart attack.
The headlights switch off and the talking stops. And I bet he was like, I know you're still there.
Exactly. Oh, they're gone.
I'm still having a heart attack. Can my life get any worse?
That does lend credibility to his story, in my opinion. Because that is how you would hide. I feel like that's how this, group of men would hide.
Yeah.
Just turn the lights off and stop talking.
Oh, dude, no, shut up. So he's like, okay, well, that's lame. Well, I guess I'll go back to try not to die again. So then a little bit later, I'm not exactly sure how much later, but he actually sees flashlights in the area. And so he gets out of his car again and calls out again. And the same thing happens. The flashlights turn off and the talking stops.
Oh, that's so weird.
It is very bizarre.
Give me willies. Give me the goosebumps.
Yeah. So eventually, I guess in the early morning, he feels strong enough to hike back down. So he goes to hike back down, I guess the 8-ish miles down to the lodge where he had stopped before, to get a drink or something. and he passes a Montego on the way down. Now, he didn't think much of it because people park, people just hang out, and he's like, whatever. These people were mean to me.
Yeah.
But then later, when it turned out that there were reports from the authorities, the police were asking if anyone with information would come forward, he said, "Oh, that sounds familiar."
Yeah.
So that's strange, but it should be noted. I mean, it's easy to say, well, this person could have been imagining it. It
Right.
should be noted that, having a heart attack, he could have been in some kind of mentally compromised state.
Yeah.
And one source I listened to for research said that I guess this kind of heart attack actually can lead to kind of mild hallucinations.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
So upon hearing his story, the boy's parents said that ignoring someone's pleas for help
There's
would have
different
been
kinds
out
of
of
heart
character
attacks?
for them. Yeah, I guess.
Huh.
Mild and major,
Some of them
like
make you
different parts of the
hallucinate?
heart, different parts of the heart.
Oh, okay. I get
Yeah.
it. Oh, okay.
So, and we don't know exactly, for one, he might not have been as loud as he thought he was. He might have just kind of filled in the blanks in his mind and just assumed they were lights. And maybe they were just like, kind of his eyesight going weird,
Maybe.
Like sometimes you see spots,
Yeah.
or something like that. Who knows? It's hard to say. And the boy's parents, all of them said that ignoring him would have been out of character for all the boys.
Right.
So you take his account for what you will. Maybe we'll put a pin in it for now.
Yeah.
There was another report that police kind of tucked away, and it was a eyewitness report of a woman in Brownsville, 30 miles away from where the car was found.
Okay.
Now, she told police that she thought she saw 4 of the 5 boys at a store 2 days after they disappeared. Now, she identified specifically Weir and Hewitt, and that kind of checks out because she said they were together, and Weir and Hewitt were kind of like more, like they were
the core group.
they were like
They were the core friends.
they were best friends in the best friends, right?
Yeah.
Like they were always together, and kind of behavior she identified for the most part lined up with how they were like. The odd thing that stood out, though, a couple actually, she said they came and went in a red pickup truck,
Huh.
which of course, why would they be in
Right.
one?
That is famously not a Mercury
Montego.
Yeah.
She also identified Hewitt as using a payphone. Okay, so it's not Sterling; it was Hewitt that had the problem with the payphone because
I see.
she said Hewitt was using the payphone, but Hewitt's brother denied he would do that because he was the one who hated using the phone.
I see.
So why would he use the payphone
That's
now?
the glaring inconsistency.
But it should be noted that Brownsville, yes, being very far away, is where they would have ended up had they made their way back down the road after abandoning the car.
Huh.
So it does kind of make some sense maybe if they had hitched a ride.
Right, yeah. We started walking back down the road.
Or something. And I should actually say, Shones, one of the cars, or the car he mentioned seeing was actually a pickup truck.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah.
So, but they had 2 eyewitness testimonies, possible sightings of them. Both may have been true. Both may have not been true. Maybe there was something in the middle. Either way, police didn't have much to go on other than that, and the boys stayed gone, and as seemingly disappeared into the void until later that June.
Whoa.
So from February to June. Now, it was, I believe, early June, and it was a group of motorcyclists who happened upon a Forest Service trailer and campsite kind of off the road. Mm-hmm. What they noticed was the front window had been broken in the trailer, and then they noticed that there was a foul odor coming from inside. And upon inspection, Weir's body was found. It was found alone. Upon inspection, they saw that he evidently died from a combination of starvation and hypothermia. They figured he was probably starved because he had lost about half his body weight, about 100 pounds, and having a ton of beard growth. Investigators figured he had survived between 8 to 13 weeks.
Man.
Which I guess if you do the math, had he actually survived 13 weeks, that would place him, I guess, within days of being found.
Oh gosh.
So it kind of makes you wish,
Man.
kind of makes you hope he only made it 8.
8? I guess.
Because wouldn't that be tragic? Just days away.
Seriously. Oh man.
Yeah. So of course authorities they had a big boost to continue the search. Although I guess at this point it's more of a recovery, most likely.
Yeah.
So they searched the area between the trailer and where the Montego was found. And then they found the remains of Madruga and Sterling on opposite sides of the road the next day, the day after they found Weir in the trailer. So I should mention that it wasn't like a main road, really, between the Montego abandonment site and the trailer.
Yeah.
But it was kind of a makeshift road-ish because the day before the boys had gone up there, the Forest Service had driven like a snowcat up to the trailer, and so it compacted the snow, and so it made a bit of probably like a natural road that the boys evidently probably did follow.
Right.
That being said, that compacted snow still would have come up to about, like 4 to 6 feet. And so that's not fun at all to walk up all that way. So, okay, so Madruga and Sterling.
Was there any, like, did you see if there were, like, Weir, if when they found his body, was there indication that there was, like, food in the trailer?
Oh.
Any rations in the trailer?
We will get to that for sure.
Oh, okay,
We
cool.
will get to that. It's very notable.
Okay, I was trying to do the math on... Mm-hmm. I would actually guess it's closer to 13 weeks.
Yeah.
He lost 100 pounds?
He lost, is what they said.
Yeah.
About 100 pounds.
That's insane.
I
but
know. In 13
I can't
weeks
imagine.
about.
I can't imagine that you could lose that in 8 weeks.
I don't. Yeah,
I think it's closer to 13.
Must have been on the longer side then. Yeah. So with Madruga and Sterling, that was a little. I don't remember the word. I don't know what the word for it. So Madruga and Sterling were also like buddies among buddies. Like they were together a lot. They were always around each other, and they were found together in between, almost exactly halfway between the car and the trailer, on opposite sides of this kind of makeshift road of compacted snow. Okay. There was very little left of them. Scavengers having gotten to the bodies. Autopsies on them pointed to hypothermia as causes of death for both of them.
Sure.
Deputies theorized that one of the two had likely given in to the need for sleep that comes with hypothermia, and the other might have refused to leave him because it's probably unlikely that they both would have succumbed to hypothermia at the same time.
Oh, that's so absurdly sad.
Yeah. They were particularly close even among the 5. Now, 2 days after that, they found Hewitt's remains about 2 miles northwest of the trailer. And again, with him, there was not much left. His death was also attributed to extreme cold. Now, what's particularly tragic about this discovery was it was Hewitt's own father who found his spine, actually.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
I know.
Whoa.
So Weir was found in the trailer. Madruga and Sterling were found between the car and the trailer, and Hewitt was found 2 miles northeast of the trailer. I should say, actually, in case I forgot, the trailer was about 20 miles from the car.
Oh, wow.
So the boys hiked in 4 to 6 feet of snow, 20 miles to this trailer.
Dang. So it feels unlikely that that lady saw them at the store.
You would think so, yeah. So it's, for that to be accurate, the boys would have had to go down the mountain, go to the store, and then for some reason go back up the mountain.
Unless it was like maybe they hitched a ride walking back down with that truck, and then they're, they kicked it with like the owner of that truck, and then they were like, okay, like now can you take us back to our car? We can get back up there. I bet we can get it out now. They brought it back up. Could not get it out, but they could have gotten it out.
But they could have easily.
Yeah, that's weird.
Easily. The all sources said it would have been very easy for them to get it out. So it's not really stuck. It was more like just kind of like a oops, you know.
Well, remember when we had to get your car out of the driveway like 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did it.
It was probably less stuck than that.
Man.
Or, as stuck as that
Right, yeah, like
at most.
Yeah.
So we have Weir accounted for, Madruga, Sterling, and Hewitt. Matthias's remains were never found. Although about a quarter mile Hewitt was found northeast of the trailer, northwest of the trailer, about a quarter of a mile from there. There were 3 Forest Service blankets and a rusted flashlight discovered. So one could assume that could have been from Matthias, but his remains were not found at all. Investigators, though, could not determine how long they had been there. So he could have left those, but they could have also just been not connected at all.
Yeah.
Investigators, though, did distribute a picture of Matthias to mental institutions all over the state, but there was no success because, you'll remember, he was a diagnosed schizophrenic,
right?
Who presumably had not been on his medication,
right?
Because he did not take his medication with him to the game.
Okay.
It was a long shot, but they tried it. They figured, hey, maybe he got lost and he's in a bad state and got taken to an institution. But no, there was nothing. So, this is an odd case, and the one thing it shares with the Dyatlov Pass, like I mentioned before, was kind of like each time you crack more of the nut open, there's more questions.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense, and there's a lot of dead ends. For instance, like, they say, hey, where's the car? They find the car. Well, why is it there? Okay, where are the boys? Why were they there?
Right.
Like when Weir was found, a lot of questions. There was evidence. So Weir was the one in the trailer who lost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
So when he was found, there was evidence he had not been alone in the trailer for the whole time. For instance, he had been found wrapped in 8 layers of sheets from head to toe. Now, not in a way that a person by themselves could wrap themselves. Like the sheet was like tucked behind his head in a way like almost kind of like he was wrapped. Yeah, after he was dead. On the table next to him were his wallet, his ring, a gold necklace, and a watch.
Gold necklace?
Yeah, he had a gold necklace. Oh, okay. Yeah.
His gold necklace.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The one thing that didn't belong to him was a watch, a gold watch. It was not his, and none of the parents said it belonged to their son either. So this watch could have been a whole nother party's who was there, or it could have just been left by a ranger,
right,
or something. Who knows? Another thing missing entirely were his shoes. They were not in the trailer. They were not even around the campsite. And so consequently, his feet were badly frostbitten. One source I saw said almost gangrenous. Yeah, so it was really, really in a bad state. Most puzzling was how Weir had died, almost why he had died. Because succumbing to hypothermia in the freezing cold is not unusual, but the trailer contained a fireplace, matches, and plenty of kindling in the form of like wooden furniture, books, and such that had not been used. In fact, the fireplace was determined to have not been used at all. Heavy clothing for the Rangers had also been untouched in its storage. A dozen ration cans in the storage shed outside had been used, but there was a locker in that same shed that had enough food to last all 5 men a whole year. And that locker had not been touched either. So there was plenty of like this trailer was built. Its whole purpose was to keep someone alive,
right? Yeah.
In this situation, and it was not taken advantage of at all. Also, there was a butane tank on site that could have provided easy gas heat to the trailer, and that was unused. And all one would have had to do was just turn the valve, and then they would have been fine. Now, this could be explained by his, kind of mental disability.
Right.
Right, as his own family said, he lacked a degree of common sense.
Yeah.
That's why I say, like, not to not to really milk this point, but everything is a factor in this kind of scenario.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say though. Oh well. Yeah. I mean, they were generally functional people though. I mean, like, holding down a job is not the same thing as like
Survival.
being really cold and not putting on a coat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, right, exactly. And there was a kind of a theory put out that maybe, one or all of the boys, whoever was in this trailer, you figured it was private property since the door was locked and
Right.
they had to bust open the window and they didn't want to like be prosecuted for
That's all I could think
thievery.
of. Like maybe they'd be afraid of like getting in trouble. That's all I could think of.
But I figure that's something you do at first. Like once you get like, say, 10 weeks in and you're
that's
literally dying,
That is true.
you kind of do what you have to do.
That is very true.
Or they thought the person was going to return, right? It's a Forest Service trailer. They figure, they're going to get in here and save us. But again, after so long and, like it's coming down to the wire, wouldn't you do what you have to do to survive? I don't know. But very puzzling indeed. However, even if we're, for some reason, did not know how or something kept him from taking advantage of this stuff, there's reason to believe Matthias, Hewitt, Madrigal, or any combination of them may have been with him at some point.
Right.
Because Matthias's sneakers were found inside, while Weir's shoes were gone. So it can be theorized that Matthias took Weir's leather shoes before he left, possibly after Weir's passing or before. Now, he could have taken them because, maybe for warmth or because maybe his own frostbitten feet were too swollen for his own shoes. Maybe he would have taken Weir's larger shoes and chosen to go outside, maybe find help or something. I don't really know.
Do you know what kind of shoes Matthias's were?
I just saw they were sneakers. They were just described as sneakers.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, also could just be like leather. If it's genuine leather, maybe it's just sturdier and better for walking in the snow than sneakers.
Right. So who knows? Maybe Weir could have just been in no shape to walk, and then Matthias said, "I'm kind of a last ditch effort to find someone. I'm gonna go. I need your shoes." Or he could have taken them after Weir passed. I don't know. So
Or maybe Matthias was never in the trailer.
Oh, he's never in the trailer.
Honestly,
Maybe Weir just took his shoes.
No way of knowing.
Yeah.
Honestly,
that's kind of what is crazy about it, is the fact that we just don't. There's really no way to know. You can connect dots, but there's no definitive answers here. And also, the rations that have been opened would have required what's called a P38 can opener, which is a kind of a simple device, but it's you kind of have to know how to do it to use it, and that's something that Matthias would have been familiar with in the military.
I have been stumbled by can openers before.
Yeah, sometimes you have to know what you're doing. So Matthias would have had to know how to use it. So there's that. So I think it's safe to assume Matthias was in the trailer, at least him,
probably
at some point. And I think it's reasonable to assume Matthias, especially with his military training, would have had the wits to take advantage of at least one of the things the trailer site had to offer.
That's what I was going to say, because Matthias, like I said, schizophrenia, but like if he's a medicated, treated schizophrenic, is essentially just like, you might as well not even mention they have schizophrenia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell, especially having training. You think you'll be able to take advantage of that because in the military they teach you how to survive.
Right.
So it's just very strange. Now, there were some theories I'm going to get into, just a couple. Investigators were at a loss as to what led up to their deaths. For instance, why had they even been up there? I think that's kind of the biggest mystery of all.
Yeah,
why were they up there? Dozens of miles off course and thousands of feet up in the middle of night without proper clothing. Madruga's mother stated later that she strongly believed there was some force, as she said, that made them go up there and that they would not have fled off into the woods. So you've probably noticed that their parents, the boys' families, all have strong opinions on what they would or wouldn't do.
Right.
And basically, it all comes down to, I mean, yeah, you know your family, but how it's hard. I think it'd be hard to say of your child, especially, or like a brother, like, yeah, he probably would have messed up in the situation, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. So we have to take their word on faith as much as anything. Anyway, Weir's brother pointed the finger at Matthias, actually. So, and this is kind of a common sentiment among people, is that Matthias had something to do with it. And I think it's kind of unfairly levied at him being a schizophrenic. I think it's easy to demonize someone with schizophrenia, in no small part due to, you know, popular culture and movies and stuff. But he pointed the finger at Matthias a little bit, believing that he, who was the only member other than Madruga with a license, was actually the one driving the car, and that he took them up there. Now, it should be noted that Jack Beecham, who was the former Yuba County sheriff, also kind of agreed with this theory, that Matthias at least had some kind of hand in it. I read also somewhere that some of the other parents were not unconvinced that Matthias was not involved at all.
But he's also the only one that doesn't have any parents in the game, right?
You know, he lived at home too.
Oh, he did? Oh, yeah. I thought he didn't. Okay.
Yep. Now, as I mentioned before, he was prone to violent outbursts when he wasn't on his medication, especially. But as we mentioned before, he was on his medication, and his own father was noted as saying that he was on the straight and narrow and was a success story. At least I believe his doctor said that.
Plus, like, it's not like they were murdered.
Yeah, they're not murdered.
Like Weir it had been like 3 months. Yeah,
none of them showed any signs of violent death.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. So like I said, I think these theories against Matthias are kind of unfortunate, and they could be chalked up to just strong stigmas against mental illness at the time and kind of now.
Yeah, and apparently. The fact that he was the only one that wasn't found.
And that the one he wasn't found. And I don't think he's like living on a beach or nothing.
No, I don't either.
Right? But I think anyone who's not found in this scenario is just like, it just activates a part of people's brains that are like, ooh, that's eerie. That's sinister. So, I don't know. I don't think it's likely that one of them snapped and went nuts.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because that's just not the nature of their deaths or situation.
Yeah. Another theory about Matthias, though, that isn't as sinister is apparently he knew people, he had friends in Forbes-town. Now, that's a little bit east of the midway point between Yuba and Chico.
Yeah.
So, and evidently, it's been said that driving from Chico to Forbes, if that's what you're doing, especially at night, it's easy to actually miss like the turnoff to Forbes-town, and actually end up on that road. One thing that's kind of a glaring hole in that theory is that, you know, that Matthias wanted to visit his friends in Forbes-town and they just got lost. Is that his friends there said that they hadn't spoken in years and were not really close, and that would be very bizarre for Matthias to just drop in on them.
Yeah.
Right.
After
so they're
a
not
basketball game at night.
Exactly, right? Especially since Matthias was so excited for the game the next day that he told his mom to make sure he didn't oversleep. So why would he just burn more time being out late?
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense at all once you kind of think about it. And even, like you said before, even if they had tried to go to Forbes-town and gotten lost, why wouldn't they turn around when it was clear they were off course anyway? Even if they were trying to go to Forbes-town, once you're way up in the mountains and there's snow around you, it's clear, and the road, there's no more road.
Yeah, I don't think this is the way to Forbes-town.
It's literally just dirt and rocks. And it's so bad that you have to drive your car at 5 miles an hour. You're gonna turn around. And someone said that okay, well, maybe they were waiting for an actual good place to turn around, because maybe it was kind of a narrow mountain road. But I think in that situation, there's no one around. You're just gonna do a U-turn, right?
Yeah. Or a 3-point if it's if you don't have that much room, 8-point. I would just turn around. I would just turn around.
Yeah.
It's easy to be a armchair survivalist, but I would think I'd just turn around.
Yeah, in
and
that
like I said,
scenario.
I feel like the undamaged undercarriage just speaks to determination.
Yeah, because there was a theory that was postulated that I think in most disappearances, someone has a theory that they saw something they shouldn't have, right? And that these boys were chased up the mountain, and then they abandoned the car, and then they ran away into the woods and got lost and died. But to that point, that there was no damage on the undercarriage, and that he was driving really slow,
Right.
just undercuts that thought that they were being chased, right?
Right.
Because when you're chased, you're like, oh my gosh, and you
You're
just floor it.
chasing, yeah.
So there was a degree of determination and thought in going up there.
Yeah.
And investigators noted that the five men seemed to move with a purpose after abandoning the car, because they followed that kind of makeshift road rather than wandering in a circular motion like a lost person would.
Oh yeah, huh?
So at the very least, they may have had a plan once they got stuck. It may have been a bad plan, but somebody floated this idea to kind of follow this kind of this makeshift compacted snow road that's, again, 4 to 6 feet tall, rather than walk back down the road. And in case you forgot, that lodge that Schoen started out from was about 8 miles down the road. Now, the trailer was about 20 miles away. Now, they couldn't have known that it was 20 miles away, but once you are hiking for a crazy long time, I don't know. Again, why would you turn around? It may have been kind of a sunk cost fallacy type thing,
like maybe sunk cost.
right? Like, they're like, man, we got this far. Let's just, how far can it be?
Yeah.
But the road down the mountain. I mean, if you're in such a bind, they walked up the mountain. They kept walking up it. Like, you would think in that situation you would walk down, especially since they would have had to pass that kind of lodge anyway.
Yeah.
And the road had been plowed the day before, so it was reasonably, okay to walk.
Right.
A lot more than just in the snow.
Wait, you said that the trailer was 20 miles away from the car?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
You'd have to walk for like 10 or 12 hours in the snow to get to that.
A very long time, and some people could think like, well, because some people think that all 5 of the boys got to the trailer, and that who was it, Sterling and Madruga died leaving the trailer to find help, and then died that way. But the fact that they were found basically halfway between the car and the trailer, and the fact that walking in the middle of the night with no coat on, with like no boots or anything like that, in like 6 feet of snow, I think it's kind of reasonable to assume that they would succumb to hypothermia.
Yeah.
At least one of them, and then the other one possibly not wanting to leave him or wanting to wait until he's okay, not realizing he's not going to be okay, also succumbs to hypothermia. Yeah, like I said before, they may have tried following the tracks left behind by that snowcat that had come through the previous day or two. So at least that's a little bit of logic, not
Right.
great logic, but at least that is a little bit of something.
Yeah, I can see it because that vehicle went somewhere, so it's like, well, we'll follow the tracks to wherever the vehicle went.
Yeah,
and
rather
there'll be
than
people there.
rather than downhill. Now, Weir, Matthias, and Hewitt then probably found the trailer and broke in. Believing it to be private property, they may have been afraid to make themselves too much at home, like I said before, and they probably thought the owners would return soon anyway. Like, I don't know, like, park ranger protocol. Like, I don't know, like... Yeah, frankly, before this, if you had asked me, like, if like, months would go by before, like, a ranger would return to, like, a ranger campsite, I would have thought, like, no, of course, they're probably going to be back in, like, a week or so.
Oh, yeah.
So they probably figured that help would return soon, but it didn't. They were up there for at least up to 13 weeks in there.
That's so tragic that point where you find a trailer full of food and coats and a fireplace with matches and like gas heat should be like the miracle. Like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be okay. We can, and then you survive until help comes 3 months later.
Yeah,
and that just was not the case in this story.
it's just not. It's just such a tragic end. So they stay in there. It's reasonable maybe to think that the three remaining friends stayed in there for some weeks, and then Matthias, maybe after Hewitt, or after Weir died, decided like a last ditch effort to find help, or maybe Matthias and Hewitt both tried to find help for Weir.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to why Weir didn't take advantage of the food and the heat and stuff, I'm wondering if maybe in the hike up to the trailer, since he's not an outdoorsy guy, and one could maybe infer since he's not a crazy physically fit guy, maybe his feet got really swollen, because he had leather shoes. Maybe it's not great for walking in, and maybe he had, because they noted that his feet were extremely frostbitten, and so maybe he just couldn't walk.
Oh, maybe couldn't get up.
Maybe he couldn't get up or something. Maybe he relied on Matthias and Hewitt for stuff.
Maybe.
And again, Matthias didn't have his medication, and so maybe he opened the first rations, and then he kind of got in a bad state.
Maybe.
And maybe that's when he left, right? And then maybe Hewitt went after him or something.
Could be.
And then that leaves Weir kind of alone and unable to care for himself,
right,
or something. It's just really hard. It's hard to fathom, hard to imagine. It's just something happened, Either Weir was physically or intellectually unable to help himself once he was alone, I assume. Now, this theory that I kind of just put forth, it doesn't really include the two sightings mentioned before from Shones and the lady at the store in Brownsville. Taking those into account, it just muddies the water a lot.
Yeah.
Even if one of them is true. And if one of them is true, I would assume it's Shones' account and not the store.
The
lady at the stores. Because that just doesn't make much sense to me.
I feel like I could synthesize them. Where being like, I don't know. They might, like a truck might have come up. I don't know whether it had flashlights though. That doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. Yeah.
But I don't know. I could see it where it's like, I could see an offer to come down and we'll give you a place to sleep for a couple days and then bring you up and get your car.
Maybe.
But
yeah,
maybe just then didn't stick around to make sure I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't really make any sense either. I mean, none of it makes sense, so it's kind of like...
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any less sense than the rest of it, I guess.
It's kind of hard to apply Occam's razor to this scenario because nothing really is simple.
Yeah.
But if Shone's account is even kind of accurate, then the five of them didn't want to be found. If it was them he called out to, because even if he did see people, it may not have actually been them at all.
Right.
It could have been another group that didn't come forward and say they saw the Montego.
Yeah.
But Shone said he saw a woman with a baby. At least that's what he thought he saw.
Yeah.
He could have been wrong. And people point to this as being kind of sketchy. Like maybe the five boys, or maybe the five didn't. They were doing something odd, something sketchy. They didn't want to be found. But I think this even kind of jives. Like, yeah, their parents said it was out of character for them to ignore a plea for help. But imagine you're in the forest in the middle of the night, no one's around, and you hear someone like
yelling,
screaming for help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
You imagine they would kind of just clam up, right?
Yeah.
That's really spooky. It's not like, middle of Main Street and someone's like, "Hey, can you help me jumpstart my car?"
Yeah.
Someone's like literally like, "I'm dying." Or something. Yeah, and like you said, if they were indeed in Brownsville days after they disappeared, then they somehow would have made their way back up the mountain and died. But at any rate, all we can know for sure is that this was a tragic end to 5 lives, and that a normal day can easily and quickly spiral out of control. That's my main takeaway, actually, is that like those boys were riding so high, and then things turned around so fast.
Right.
Like, your day can just turn around in really profound ways, and you don't even know it. It's easy to break down strange details in this and see sinister causes, like Matthias went crazy, or like they were chased up there, or some force, brought them up there, tricked them up there, and then it killed them. But people do strange things in strange situations. Like, we don't really have a lot of experience being lost in the woods. And I think extreme situations kind of bring out kind of the most basic kind of reasoning in people, right? And we don't really have like, people literally need to be trained to have their wits about them in stressful situations. And at least 4 of the boys did not have that. Matthias might have, and we don't know how he did during all this.
Yeah.
But again, he didn't have his medications, and I think the last thing a schizophrenic needs is extreme stress.
True.
So who knows what went down? Like not that he went harmed him,
right?
But maybe he was very helpful in keeping them alive,
right.
But then he just was not able to after so long. It's just I can't even picture that, really, just being stuck in this extremely stressful event, being lost in the wilderness overnight, again and again and again, and witnessing 2 of your friends go down first, and then you live day after day knowing that, and then no help comes, and then all of a sudden you're alone.
Right.
I think that was really profound to me, just thinking about that. And I don't want this to be just fodder for content.
Yeah.
I think some YouTube channels kind of fall into that pit of kind of playing up the creepiness and the spookiness of it. Oh man, this is crazy content.
Rather than the tragedy of it. It's very strange. I think, to me, the strangest thing, I think a lot of people point to the trailer being the strangest thing. Why was it not used? But I think you can kind of accept it. I think the strangest thing to me, and that I can't square, is why they're up there in the first place. The point is, I mean, it shows you how just kind of one unwise decision opens up for a lot more unwise decisions, and the further you go, the fewer good options you have. And that's just simply what happened to these five men. Right.
It's possible they simply got lost and doubled down on their mistake too many times, and then it went from there.
Right. I feel rarely are you faced with decisions that involve yours or someone else's life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just don't know what you're gonna do until you're in that situation. You just don't. There's no way of really knowing.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if there's gonna be any takeaway from this, I don't want to really entertain as much as really drive home the point to people, anyone listening.
Something to think about.
Things.
All 4 of you listening right now.
Yeah. If that, all things go wrong really fast, and I think if I were to disappear, there would be 1,000 different odd things that people would point to, be like, oh, that was strange, or why did they do that?
I think that's the other thing. Is we're also used to nowadays somehow being able to find some evidence of every detail in a situation. You know what I mean? Things are tracked so effectively within polite society nowadays that. But whenever you actually get out there and there's not those factors, there's not actually records or anything that you can track or point to or any trail, then you realize that you actually cannot figure out anything from just looking at it. It seems like you have so many factors and variables here. We have the bodies, we have the car, we have the tracks, we have the trailer, but that actually doesn't mean it. You just don't know, because it comes down to their decision making, and there's no way to know that. Yeah,
and looking back after the fact, I mean, we are just in a different mindset than they were. It's easy to look at the record and say, why would someone logically do that? Whereas very few of the decisions we make, even in everyday life, is driven by logic.
Right. Armchair quarterback. I mean, or armchair survivalist. Even with there's a quarter tank of gas in the car, I could see there could have been a conversation where we should just turn back around. But if you're not entirely sure where you are, well, what if we run out of gas and then we're still lost and it's still dark and cold and we're out of gas?
Yeah.
Why don't we just follow these tracks that'll lead us to somewhere? Then at least we can come back here and get the car or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or even taking Madruga's intellectual state into account. That car was his baby, and he may have rather hiked in feet of snow for however long, rather than risk scratching his car, pushing it out of the snow.
No.
You know, like to him, it makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it also goes to, I'll say it again, like we never really face life and death decisions. You and I, most of the people I assume listening to this, who will ever listen to this podcast, do not have to. It's a nice situation to be in. And I think that as a result, sometimes life and death decisions, like that just seems like something that happens in movies. Like you don't, at that point, you may not be thinking that this decision will lead to everybody dying.
Yeah.
You know, you might just be like, well, we'll just be uncomfortable for a little bit, but we'll find help, you know?
Yeah, I think realizing, like in the movies, people realize right away that they're in trouble. And like this is actually down to the wire. This is life and death. And I imagine for these 5, it was probably like a very slow realization. Like they were probably deep into it before they realized. Like I bet, you know, if we assume that Madruga, Sterling, and Weir, or Hewitt, Matthias, and Weir got to the trailer, they probably didn't know that Sterling and Madruga were basically dead by that point.
Right.
They probably assumed that one of the two needed to catch his breath and the other was going to stay with him, and then they'll catch up.
Right.
And then it was probably like a day, 2 days, and they slowly realize, like, I don't think they're coming. You know, right. I just can't imagine what that
seriously
is like. I really can't, and it's just really sad because, you know, there is one account where was it Weir who was described as like his definition of fun was calling, you know, any one of the 5, or like maybe it was Sterling, and just like reading like funny names in the phone book.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I don't know. It's such a, I don't know. It's just such a joyful person, you know, and like no one deserves to have that happen to them. But I can't imagine a person like that just going in such a horrible way.
Man.
Yeah, so this is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
And bummer. I will say, with all this said about not wanting to milk stuff for content, Dyatlov Pass is really crazy, and I want to talk about it. Okay, it is insane. Sure. It is really related.
We should get a guest for that, because we both actually know that story. We should get a guest for that one.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. But yeah, so that one, oh my gosh. There's so many weird, zany ones about it. Like, it is kind of crazy. Yeah. So that is the Yuba County 5. I kind of consulted a few different sources. One source that I liked a lot that I would recommend to folks is Nexpo on YouTube. Has a good video about them. I think it's just called the Searching for the 5. Great production value, really fun to watch. He has a lot of kind of cool stuff. But yeah. Cool. That's it. Before we wrap up, I just want to plug my Hey Series blog here. I just kind of it was kind of spun off of a podcast. It was kind of spun off of a podcast idea that we had, you and I, but it kind of fizzled out. So I just kind of took it under my own wing and kind of ran with it as a blog now. Maybe later down the road it'll branch off into YouTube, but I don't know. But basically it just goes into how well, different franchises and series and books and movies and games and TV, how well they jive as a whole, right? Because from one entry to the next, quality can dip or like themes can change. Like how well does it exist as one cohesive narrative? And hopefully, people will like it. I did The Office and Spider-Man, like the Raimi trilogy, and soon I should have the Mass Effect trilogy on there.
Cool.
Hopefully people like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, check out Justin's blog. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Podcast Sean and Justin made it. Theme was previously stated. About to start, so glad I waited. Somehow related.